Good evening, everyone, and I'd like to call to order this regular meeting of the Board of Education of Round Lake Area District 116 School Board on October 18th, 2021, here at 7:07 p.m. If I could, let's get a roll call of members, please.
Mrs. Klingler?
Here.
Mr. Jewett?
Here.
Mrs. Larson?
Here.
Miss Lee? Here. Mr. DeVera?
Here.
Mr. Francisco?
Here.
Mrs. McGinley?
Here.
All right, next up, let's please have the stand and Pledge of Allegiance. All right, board members, just a reminder, please keep your phones on silent and off of the table. And next up is the approval of the meeting agenda. Any questions in regards to the agenda that's there? If not, can we get a motion to approve the agenda?
So move. Second.
Motion by Mr. Jewett, seconded by Ms. Klingler? No, sorry. Yep, Mrs. Larson. Wow, it's going to be that night. All right, roll call, please.
Mrs. McGinley?
Yes.
Mr. DeVera?
Yes.
Mr. Francisco?
Yes.
Miss Lee?
Yes.
Mrs. Larson?
Yes.
Mr. Jewett?
Yes.
Mrs. Klingler?
Yes.
All right, we have an approved agenda. And first up on that agenda are the greatness of the special recognition and presentations. And I think we've got the September Athletes of the Month. Mrs. Moran, take it away.
Good evening. Thank you for having me here. Up first, I would like to introduce Scott Blecka, our head football coach, to introduce our male September Athlete of the Month.
Marco Jimenez is going to be our football player for the month. He's one of our senior leaders and one of our team captains on the football team. He's played linebacker all season, but also filled in at right guard on offense, running back, and pretty much anywhere else we've needed him to. We've had to change his number in the middle of games just so he could be an eligible number because he's just the type of kid that's always doing everything right. From the beginning of the season through the end of September, first 6 games of the year, Marco had 109 total tackles, which according to Max Preps, placed him number 6 in the nation in that category and number 1 in the state of Illinois during that time period. Up to this point, overall, he currently has 124 tackles, which puts him second place in the state and top 20 in the nation.
And up next, I'd like to introduce Grace Larson, our girls volleyball coach, to introduce our female September Athlete of the Month.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Grace Larson. I'm the head volleyball coach here at the high school, and tonight I am recognizing Lily Burton as the September Athlete of the Month. She is a middle hitter and captain on our varsity volleyball team, leading our team in blocks and kills this season. Lily is a leader both on and off the court, and her presence and I'm sorry, I'm losing my train of thought. Her performance in the classroom and on the court are very reflective of her hard work. So we're going to congratulate her tonight.
All right, next up, we've got the Round Lake Area Exchange Club Youth of the Month, and I believe this is Mr. Bear.
Ladies and gentlemen of the board, Dr. Mendoza, it's with great pleasure that I introduce to you the very first of the year, and we got a good one. This is Saul Torres. Saul's the type of student that you see everywhere. He's involved in athletics, takes the most rigorous classes that we have to offer here at the high school. And one of the things that we tasked him with and his friends at the senior level in the Panther crew is to help transition our freshmen when we realized that our freshmen, last time they were at like a normal school, was 7th grade. And so that transition to high school is incredibly important, and Saul and his classmates have certainly stepped up to that challenge. So I do want to introduce to you Saul, and I already listened to his speech, and it's a good one. And the theme this year from the Exchange Club is how COVID has changed the student. So he's got some interesting insight to share. Ladies and gentlemen, Saul Torres.
This works? Okay. Thank you, Mr. Berry, for the introduction. I guess I'll just start. I feel that I'm a very different person since the start of the pandemic. A lot, and I mean a lot, has happened between the beginning of 2020 and now. Ranging from political movements to what I like to do for fun, this 1.5 year gap has changed many things. I'll start with the basics. At the beginning of the pandemic, I was stuck at home with not much else to do. I would do my work for school, play some video games, and try to find ways to pass the time. This, quickly, got boring and repetitive. There was little motivation to finish my work since it felt like it would never end, and no one was prepared for what would happen, so everything was just a big mess. I was more than relieved when summer hit because those couple of gruesome months were finally over. Sooner rather than later, summer ended, and I was off to my junior year of high school. A part of me was glad to be back in school, knowing online learning would be different this time. This happiness very quickly wore off, though, and soon it would turn out to be a terrible experience for me. Within a couple of weeks, I was behind on work, had little motivation for my classes, and felt like I was doing the bare minimum. My days all felt the same. I would wake up, get on a Zoom call, eat, do some work, eat again, go to practice, do some homework, and then sleep. It felt like it would never end. My body would not get used to doing work at home. My home is a place I go to relax, enjoy my free time, and get to do the things I enjoy. Not to get up, move 5 feet away from my bed, and go to school. That year was also probably one of my worst years for sports. I wasn't getting the same joy from running as I would in years past. It felt like a chore, and what's worse, my friends would improve and get faster, and I was still stuck at my same old pace. My 5-minute, 40-second mile times from the year prior had turned into 7-minute times or worse. I know I've mentioned many bad things, but I promise there is some good in here. School may have been repetitive, and I may have fallen behind on many of my assignments, but there were still a few of my classes that I actually excelled in, and more so than in previous years. One of these happened to be AP US History. I had a rocky start with this class, but soon I would get into a rhythm of doing all my readings, learning targets, and assignments. By doing all of that, I felt my understanding of such a demanding course improve, and this was reflected by getting my first ever A in an AP History class. This got me thinking, wow, who would have thought that doing all the extra work would make me learn the material better? I just want to give a quick shout out to the Schuler Scholar Program. This program has helped guide me through school, teaching me how to keep going, prioritize, time management, which we all know is very important, and staying motivated. Without them, I feel like I wouldn't be as good of a student and person. But they weren't the only ones that helped me, though. I also want to thank my cross-country and track coaches for teaching me about discipline and motivation, and to thank my parents and siblings for pushing me to do better in everything, no matter how big or small. And last but not least, all of my teachers and mentors from years past. Sure, some teachers did teach in ways that I wasn't used to, or grade harder, but that only taught me that in life, Not everyone is going to be or act the same, and I should adapt my ways of learning and listening to make the most of my time. Eventually, the school year came to a close. I was attending in-person classes, and I felt more motivated to do my work. In the end, I finished with decent grades, which could have been a bit better, but that's besides the point. And then summer came. Again. I reflected on myself throughout the summer and thought of the significant historical events that happened in a little over a year. A worldwide pandemic started, major social justice movements happened not only here in the US, but around the world too. Significant political tensions arose. The biggest US election ever took place, and the United States is now more divided than ever. These events and issues are bigger than me, yet they still affect me in different ways. I feel like a major event that people tend to forget about is the death of George Floyd through the unjust use of a policeman's power. This incident would change many things. I saw many people around me and the world become very vocal with their political opinions and their thoughts on what's right or what's wrong. Before this event, I wasn't really focused on world issues, social justice, or my own ideas. But that would all change. Earlier, I mentioned that all these events affected me in different ways, and one of those was through my mental health. The way I saw the rest of the world was through Twitter, which, I will be honest, can be a toxic cesspool at times. I witnessed many arguments on there, many of which would get heated very quickly, and only give me a negative outlook on human interactions. This feeling of negativity stayed with me long after I closed the app. I was stuck in this loop for months, and it wasn't until I made the conscious decision of simply stopping myself from reading the arguments in the first place that this constant negativity was finally lifted from me. My mental health could finally start to improve. Locally, in my community though, I noticed the same sort of effects happening. People are more likely to argue over much more minor things, either for the homecoming theme, music that's played in the halls, or even just about other people. I've never seen people argue with such intensity before, to a point where friendships can be broken from a simple argument that got too heated too quickly. I try my best to stay away from this, but when people I'm close to start arguing like this, I try to diffuse the situation since I know people can say things they don't mean when they're fueled by emotion. And after everything I've been through, I realized this is my last year in high school. A chapter of my life is closing. I don't want to waste it by sitting around and doing nothing. I want to enjoy it, take advantage of every opportunity that comes my way. Working hard in A-Push is what got me a good grade and a good experience in that class. I know working hard works, which is what I'm going to keep doing. Now, I will be dedicating my extra time to working towards my college applications, getting ready for the up-and-coming track season, giving back to the community through volunteering, and promoting the good people should be. Once I hopefully get into college, I will be pursuing a degree in the field of engineering, and I'm leaning more towards the electrical engineering. I like circuits. They're fun to design and even more fun when they blow up. Which is still helpful because although I made a mistake, I still learned something, and now I know what not to do for the next time. In terms of after college, I'm not really sure what career I will pursue. I could work for an electric company or a well-known hardware company like Intel or AMD. Only God knows what the future may hold, and I'm confident that I will find what it is I really want to do with time. Thank you for listening to my speech.
right, we are now to communications to the board, and first up is the Round Lake High School Athletics Comprehensive Improvement Strategy.
All right. Thank you for having me here this evening. I'd like to go through this plan with you. Certainly, I think it'll address a lot of the things that we hope to address in a plan for improvement for a program. There's certainly going to be some things that maybe aren't in here that you'd like to see, and any feedback would be welcomed. You'll see as we talk through this what the next steps for this will be, and so that feedback is welcomed at the end of the presentation. So with that, we're going to start 3-year plan. First and foremost is a vision for athletics, to create a dynamic athletic experience for all students that will empower them to construct a thriving future. And really, the theme when I talk to my coaches and when we meet in all of our meetings is what is that student experience like? What are we doing to ensure that they're having a great high school experience? So it really is in line with the hope and vision for our program. There are 5 goals that I'll be sharing this evening, and I'll talk about some of them. Again, if there's some questions, I can take those at the end. I want to get through it and then hopefully address most of those. The first goal is to update and upgrade our facilities. We heard in the Finance Committee a little bit about what some of those needs might be, but certainly we want to take into consideration what are the standards that we want for all of our facilities. So that's going to be the first piece in that goal, is to determine what that's going to look like. And then from that, we'll create that full inventory of what each of our facility needs, take into consideration some safety concerns and or just aesthetic, other things that we want to put into that, and then create a multi-year priority list to address the facility needs. Again, one of the considerations there is going to be budget, what's available, so that would be certainly a driver for what that's going to look like and when we can implement some of those changes. And then implement, as we move forward, creating that list and just implementing on the unique standards and needs that we have in all of our programs. Our goal 2 is to increase our participation in athletics. I tell our coaches and fine arts people in the room, don't get upset, but I tell them we got the best thing going here at the school. So, and that's what I want to create for our student athletes, is that level of experience. And so what are we doing to ensure that that's happening to get kids into our program and then give them that experience? So first strategy there is to utilize our freshman open house to showcase our programs. What are we offering? We want to make sure that all of our students have a good understanding of what that looks like. How do they get involved? What level of experience do they need to participate? And I would say in virtually all of our programs, it's very low. We have very many no-cut sports, but I don't know that students always understand that. So utilizing that evening where we're communicating with those students and their families, what those opportunities are. Also, creating a student survey to gauge interest in new programs, and just that'll happen this spring, and we'll do that again in 2 years. That'll be an ongoing thing every other year to continue to assess what our students are looking for in our programs, and then build and develop a plan to implement new programs based on the feedback that our students are providing us in those surveys, and meeting the needs of what that looks like. One of the things that I think will help us increase our participation is to understand what our student experience is looking like. So creating a feedback tool that allows our students to provide us that information, and then utilizing that in a way that our coaches can take that feedback in and make improvements inside of their programs. I really think, we're here for them and want to create a system that allows for them to tell us what that looks like from their perspective. Another strategy, and this is just a bigger picture, it's going to be a little bit further out, to try and create this comprehensive student game day sports information management program, which would include opportunities for students to have some real world experience doing some of the things that happen inside of athletics, whether that's greeting teams, helping with our athletic trainers, being a manager for our programs, creating content for social media, video board, and other things like that. But trying to get students who maybe are or not athletes or athletic to have an opportunity to participate in our athletic program. Again, just providing more opportunities for participation. And then strategy 6 is to provide programs that develop our students physically, socially, and emotionally. Certainly that's the goal of our athletic program, is to make sure that our students are developing in all of those ways. And that's in and out of season. So what can we do to create a comprehensive athletic program that meets the needs of our students? Goal 3 is to improve the development opportunities for our coaching staff. The first strategy under that is to update our coaches handbook. Inside of this handbook, it would contain all the things that they need to understand all the expectations and responsibilities they have as a coach. It gives them a resource tool that they don't always have to come to me or to another coach to ask questions, and it should give them, just everything, every form, everything we do for our program. But really, just we have one now, but it needs to be updated. Providing regular in-house professional development opportunities, whether that's bringing in a speaker, continuing to do some of the book studies that we've done. We were scheduled to do one this fall, and just given the uniqueness of the start of this year, I'll say that we put off that book study till second semester just in lieu of time for them to focus on some other things here at the school. But that's certainly something that the coaches have really enjoyed and we will continue to do. And then also determining a rotation of staff to attend out of district professional development opportunities. We certainly have a budget for professional development for our staff and want to make sure that they are being developed to the best of our abilities so that they can, again, be the best for our students. And then providing regular opportunities for our staff to collaborate with each other. Creating a mentor program for all of our new head coaches. We don't have a ton of turnover with our head coaching staff, but want to make sure that when we do bring on a new coach that they're prepared to take on the roles and responsibilities that we know our head coaches have, and that they feel successful in that process of transitioning into that position, whether they're from a lower level inside of that program and they've been in our athletic program or they're brand new to our program, that they're set up for success. Providing a department orientation for first year coaches. This would be beyond the coaches meetings that we're normally having. So again, that they feel they are prepared to lead our students. They know what my expectations for our athletic program are, and that they have all the tools necessary to be successful for our students. Oh, went too far in my notes, sorry. Attract and retain quality coaches. Again, just we want for our kids. We want to keep the great ones we have, and when we have somebody who does leave, being able to attract great coaches for our program. One of the things just to touch on in this piece is using our evaluation tool that we created a couple years ago to really have great dialogue with our coaches about growth areas. So that would just fall into that strategy. And I failed to mention this at the beginning, and I'll say that this is going to get built out. There will be a lot more levels underneath each of these. This is really the foundation for the plan, and you'll see this grow, and I'll talk about that as we get towards the end of this presentation. Goal 5 is to increase the development for our student athletes. Exploring the possibility of a strength and conditioning coach. I think that's something that all of our student athletes could benefit here at the high school is being bigger and faster and stronger. So certainly something that, like I said, would cross all programs and give all of our students an opportunity to improve. Partnering with the counseling department is strategy 2, to provide college services to all of our athletes with an emphasis on our college-bound athletes, understanding what that process is and what it takes to be a college athlete and providing them the tools that are necessary. One of the pieces that we are already working on is partnering with Honest Game to provide our students a live snapshot of where they would fall in terms of being able to pass through the clearinghouse for athletics at that level. And I think it gives our students ownership of their academics in conjunction with their athletic ability to play at the next level. Strategy 3 is that articulation between PE and athletic department. A lot of our athletes are very involved in other things. And so, we talk back to strategy 1 about a strength and conditioning coach, but where do they find the time? And so I think some of the opportunities we have is during the school day, maximizing their time and also the resources that we have available as a school district to prepare our athletes to be successful. Creating a metric tool is strategy number 4, to evaluate the number of coaches in all of our programs. What does that look like? The risk involved with with each individual sport, the number of students that are participating as that goes up and down inside of our programs, and then what are other schools in our area? What are they doing for their students? Again, going back to that student experience, making sure that we have the best for our student athletes and we can provide for them the training that they deserve. Strategy 5 is exploring the philosophy of having an assistant varsity coach in all of our sports. The rationale behind that is that there's just a lot on our head coaches and expectations, and sometimes they get pulled away from being in practice or available at all times, and we don't want our students to not have somebody there with them so that they can continue instruction and do the pieces that they need. And so that would just be something we'll look into as we get a little bit further and deeper into the plan. Creating articulation between our middle school PE programs with our high school programs, and this should also say athletic. I don't know how many times I've looked at it and didn't write it on there, so I apologize for that, but really, what are we doing to best prepare our students inside of our district from the time that they start participating as an athlete to the time that they are seniors and ready to graduate? And so that's something that we'll continue to work on and expand that articulation between our programs and the programs in the middle school. And strategy 5 is to create systems for all department functions, and really the goal behind this, in my opinion, is to create a similar experience for all of our students and across all of our programs, so that they understand what that's going to look like when they go from football to basketball to track, or take any other progression. If they're participating in multiple sports, that experience should look similar for them from sport to sport. The first thing is to integrate our student management system with our athletic registration platform. It will create ease of use for our end users, our parents, and our students, and consistency of information across platforms when they're entering it multiple times. The person that registered from school may not have put in the same information, so we really want to make sure we've got consistency with what that looks like. Defining and standardizing our social media pillars. What do we want to do? Obviously, celebration and information to put out on those platforms, but creating, again, consistency not only with what the athletic department is putting out, but from across our programs. A lot of our coaches have a social media presence. We want to make sure that we have consistency with what's coming out from our department from all angles. Strategy 3 is to identify communication systems and expectations for all stakeholders, working with Heather in our communication department, just to make sure that we can meet the needs of our students. Athletics is a little bit unique in that we require some year-round communication with our students, and some of the systems that we currently have in place don't necessarily best meet our needs. So looking at ways that we can do that make sense for the district and make sense for our program. So that's something that we're working on. Standardizing celebrations for student achievements, making sure that we're doing it is the first piece of that, but that all of our coaches, and again, that experience from program to program is looking similar across the board, and that we are all doing similar type things to recognize our students that are getting and that they get the recognition that they deserve for their accomplishments. Standardizing rostering and awards, and some of this is internal in terms of our department, making sure that, again, across the board, that we're doing the things that we need to recognize our students for the work that they're doing, that we have accurate records for what's going on. But also Athlete of the Month, how are we doing these things, all conference athletes, senior awards, and so forth in terms of that. Number 6 is to create a content calendar for our social media that'll allow for some ease of information and pushing out, and that goes back to what are those pillars, what should be going out, and then creating calendars to make sure that we're getting the information out to our community when it needs to get out. Along the lines of, again, enhancing that experience for our students is to establish an orientation for all first-time student athletes. We really want to prepare them to be as successful as they can. So whether that is their freshman year, they came out as a sophomore, they transferred in as a junior, we would want them to understand what it means to be a Panther athlete. And so we're going to use that program to get them up to speed, have them understand our expectations for our student athletes. That would be a presentation by myself and some of our student athlete leaders to ensure that they understand, not only just from their athletic director, but from what our students expect of our other students as well. Updating our end of season awards programs. This is something that I've talked with our coaches about, and creating, right now we do individual programs for each of our sports, and there's not consistency with what's being done. They have asked to go back to one end of season awards night as a program, and so we're looking into that and putting something together so that we can create that opportunity for our students to be recognized. That was a lot. And so in terms of implementation, the goal of this is something that I created. The next step is going to be to establish some focus groups for our constituent groups to really define the tactics and the strategies under each of those goals for what does this look like, and getting that feedback from each one of these groups, the students, parents, staff, and community, so that we have the buy-in that we can work together to move this forward and improve our program. Once we've done all that, and that'll be in the next couple of months, we'll evaluate and update the plan based on the feedback from each of those focus groups, and then that plan will get brought back to the board with any of those updates, and then we'll enact that updated plan. Additionally, when I come in for seasonal updates, I will provide an update on where we are with the items in the plan so that you have an ongoing understanding of where we're moving and what's going on. The last thing, I just want to provide a high-level overview of our sponsorship plan. We are still working on this. We actually had a meeting today. We have another one scheduled for next week. And just wanted you to see what we were looking to put inside of the sponsorship plan. There are currently 4 levels of sponsorship. There's some single game options available. There's opportunities for other types of sponsorship: first down, touchdown, 3-point basket, a kill in volleyball, wrestling pins, etc. If we break a school record, we could have a sponsor for that, and this, that school that would just be announced at the contest where that school record was broken. We could have halftime sponsors, game sponsors, and then we would be providing recognition for those sponsors to make sure, really, when I say sponsors, I should be saying partners. We really want this to be a win-win for us and them, and that they feel like they're getting out of our relationship what they hope to. That draft version of the sponsorship agreement is completed with our attorneys. Then this will all be vetted through finance. The goal is to bring that to finance in November, and then full board after the modifications are made, hopefully in December. Okay, now you can ask questions.
Questions from the board?
So I had a question around the focus groups. Yep. So I completely understand the idea of focus groups for some of the goals. Like the goal 1 in terms of feedback on the facility, or 2 in terms of gauging interest. But do you see feedback or focus groups for all the goals?
I would think that we may not bring all of them to all groups. Like, they may not apply. Like, we're probably not going to talk about professional development of staff with our students, right? But we will identify what those would be and what groups would talk about each one of those goals. I do think it's important to get that feedback from each of those groups on where they hope this program is headed. And so maybe it won't be specific to a goal that they were hoping something else was included that maybe isn't here, that they see as a need or something we should be a higher level priority for us.
And Mr. Jewett, I would say just high level, it's fairly similar to what you deal with in community engagement. We run a variety of curricular programs. On some we do ask for feedback and some we don't. So I think it kind of mirrors just on the athletic side how you got to be strategic with what you're asking for, because I always say if you're going to bring people in and ask and you're not going to listen, why did you ask in the first place? So we just need to be thoughtful about which ones we target for that.
One of the, I don't know if you mentioned it, I didn't hear it, so correct me if I'm wrong. Beginning to build direct relationships with outside organizations such as Spartans, ATYB, AYSO. Did you speak to that and I just missed it, or?
I don't think I specifically addressed it. It would be where I was hoping that would fall in. Hang on, I made a note of that, and is in Goal 2, Strategy 6, where we're looking to identify some in and out of season opportunities, and then it couples with that communication under Goal 5, Strategy 3, where we would be communicating those opportunities out to our stakeholders.
Okay, thank you.
I think the engagement one is big too. Winning helps engagement a lot, but in the event that we're not, we need to get people out here and get excited. It helps with the morale, I think, with the whole district. Middle school nights, elementary school nights, things like that. I'm assuming that's the parents and the focus groups and all that stuff will be a part of that. But I think that would be a great thing because when a place is packed, it's awesome. So just get excitement, get the kids excited for coming to high school, things like that. So.
Yeah, those are all in my, if you walk in my office, and you probably don't want to be in there, but I do have a board of to-dos that's behind me, and that's on there, the elementary and middle school engagement nights. Some of those ideas, I've talked to Beth about having the choir come out and sing the national anthem at a game, or recognizing our middle school students who hit honor roll and bringing them out to a game, things like that. So trying to do some of those pieces as well. While they're not necessarily identified specifically in what I shared tonight, those are some of the things, strategies that we'll be working on.
And I know you touched on this, but communicating the programs that we have too, because I think sometimes there's a disconnect. There's so many good ones that I don't think parents are aware.
Thank you, and that's something that also working with counseling to ensure that our transfer students and new students also understand what those opportunities are. So that's something that we're creating, like a one-page quick hit. Here's what athletics has, when it offers, and how to get in hold of the people that are in charge.
I just want to go to Goal 4, Strategy 2, partnering with the counseling department to provide college services to all athletes, emphasis on college-bound athletes. So I'm glad to see this one on here. I think it's an opportunity we've definitely missed in the past, and one I know the board has heard me spoke about it many times. Having a daughter who we're proud to say, was scouted for college ball, and a son even who did college marching band. Yeah, this is definitely an area that we need to focus on for our parents and community. I think every student in this building doesn't realize or understand they have the possibility to play college athletics. Now, whether it's D1, D2, D3, NAIA, whatever that will be, I really don't think we've really done that well. So I am glad to see that this is on here. I definitely would like to see more of the bullet points and how that will happen, because I know the board has heard me speak to this many times, because I know a lot of our athletes here want the opportunity to play in college. I don't think they realize they have that opportunity.
Thank you, and that's, I took some notes on what you said, and one of the things that we're doing that would also fall into that, I don't know which one it was under, but the actually Goal 5, Strategy 7, the orientation for first-time athletes, we'll also be sharing it with them in that area too. So we'll have some bullet points built up for that for you when we bring it back for an update.
Is it possible even to share when we do like those freshman open houses? I think the sooner and the different occasions that we can get this information to our parents and our students only helps, because they get all this information throughout the course of the year and it can be overwhelming. So I think the more opportunity we take with it, the better.
Thank you.
I just want to.
Sorry. No, I was just literally going to say any other questions, so you got it.
I think 2/3 of my career has been spent in districts that have high schools, and I've never seen an athletic improvement strategy presentation presented, like, ever. So I know you put a lot of time into it. It's very clear. You've been thoughtful with where you want to take the program. So I want to thank you and Kurt for continuing the discussion and taking the time to put this together in front of the board. And then I think one of the things she mentioned, just didn't want you to miss it, is our plan is to update you on progress when we do the seasonal athletic updates. So it's all part of one presentation. So very similar to how we update you on the strategic plan. What gets monitored gets done. If we're not monitoring, it's not going to get done. So we'll talk about maybe what that looks like. So.
Okay, that's going to be my next question, because what is that going to look like? Because while we have the goals and the strategies, what are the tasks and the milestones to reach these goals?
Yeah, so I think, that's to be determined. Want to make sure that the work is manageable for Becky. This is a lot, 5 goals with at least 4 strategies under each with all these timelines. So I think the idea would be to update you on the tactics and the process during each of the seasons. What we can do is figure out, we can talk internally about what that could look like. We could do a dashboard. We could, literally take this framework and literally put progress points under each strategy. I mean, whatever is best for you is something we could do. I just do want to say, very similar with the strategic plan, Becky needs the flexibility to either speed up or slow down or shift or change. I think for us, it's just making sure we communicate that out, because some of this may not play out or true out just like you hope it does. Maybe it's better and faster, or maybe it's, whoa, I got to slow down because of A, B, or C. So, we'll bring that back for your consideration. So.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, next up is Organic Life.
Good evening. Before we hear from our food service contracted vendor, there's just a couple thoughts that I want to share with the board, since this is an area I directly supervise. This evening, we had an opportunity before our board meeting to meet with Dr. Mendoza, and one of the themes that he talked about was, how do you find the joy? How do you find the new happiness after the pandemic? Because all of our jobs have changed. And certainly food service has changed as well. Whether they were assisting with produce boxes, helping deliver milk, or most recently, as we had elementary furniture coming in, we needed an extra box truck. They were our go-to. They were our lean-to. And so it really strengthened and showed the commitment and the partnership, not only in the food service delivery, but outside of that, how important that was for our community to be successful. As we talk about then directly food service, which is what they are contracted to do, on the celebration side, we do have North Chicago School District coming here on Wednesday, because I've heard great things and have seen great things about what's going on in our food service program. As you know, we did receive feedback from a parent who had some questions, some concerns about food service. I have spoken with that parent twice with my initiation, and wanted to close that loop a little bit about what the concerns were, because we want that feedback. We want to be the best we can be, and we certainly want to support not only excellence in the classroom, excellence in operations, but also excellence with food, because if students aren't eating, they can't do what they need to do here at school. So with that being said, I would like to introduce and welcome Jose Gutierrez, who is the Vice President of Organic Life. He's going to present to you some updates as the board has requested this first update. And then also here this evening, I would like to introduce Melissa Bungie. She's our Director of Food Service. I will tell you, as I've met with building principals on other questions and other situations, they refer to Melissa as her first name. They know her. She's a face in schools. She's a face within our buildings. She's not a stranger behind Organic Life. She's really very well known and respected with what she does. So with that being said, Jose.
Got it. Okay. Well, thank you, Dr. Kivens, for the introduction, and thank you all for having us here. It's refreshing to be able to see people in person. You know, for the past year and a half, we've been in an empty building, so it's just seeing students, seeing teachers, administrators. It's very. I mean, it just feels good. We feel like we're going back to normal. I'll use the clicker here. So. We're here to update you on our return to learn plan, but before we talk about what we're doing right now and what we're planning on doing in the future, I do want to do a quick pandemic recap, just to update, kind of remind us of what happened the last 18 months, which were, as we all know, were crazy, beginning in exact date March 13th. When, Pam told us, hey, we're shutting down, we have to find a way to feed our students. From then until August 22nd, 2021, about 18 months, we served a total of 1,029,990 meals to not only our enrolled students, but to our community. And that is, it's more important that it was to our community and our students, because there was a need that we saw. When the pandemic hit, there was days of uncertainty for families. We saw huge lines forming, and the USDA gave us the flexibility, of course approved by you, the board that we could feed, any child under the age of 18 in the community, and it's, everyone stepped up to the plate, and that's what we did. The way we did that was it was not a logistical nightmare, but it was fun. We it was when I say we, usually when we do these presentations, we're talking about organic life. Today, when I refer to we as pandemic recap, I'm talking about our staff, your teachers, your custodians, your bus drivers, the board, volunteers in the community. Everyone stepped up to help feed these families. From the bus drivers going to the 15 mobile sites and making the meals closer to the families that couldn't get transportation and pick up a meal. From the custodians and maintenance people helping us move milk crates, food boxes that were donated and made possible by Mr. Jewett as well. I mean, those lines, if you guys remember in the summer, they were huge, and people, I mean, it was very fulfilling. It always is, feeding students. But the past 18 months, we all felt a greater sense of responsibility in not only feeding the students, but helping a community get through one of the toughest times they'll ever be. And all of that, I mean, it was possible with the help of everybody, but it was also possible with your help. Because as you all remember, most companies laid off workers. Things shut down. With your approval, with your financial help, we were able to keep our staff on board as well, and we were able to keep them working and doing these programs, which our staff is part of the community as well. They and we are ever grateful for you guys making that possible. So thank you. Okay, so from doing the pandemic recap, like I said, we passed out more than 1 million meals in that 18-month span. Now, the challenge was in coming back and making sure that we had a plan to feed the students in school. We were doing it while they were at home. But now, so we decided to split this into a 3-phase process in order to kind of make it more feasible and make sure the students had a good experience when getting their meal. The 3-phase process was, the first phase was for the first day of school. I'm sorry, I'm pulling up the slides here because I don't have my glasses. So, yeah. No, I got it. Thank you. But thank you. So the first phase, we decided to go with a limited menu and a grab-and-go style. The reason we decided to do this was there's plenty of factors, but the main factor was the COVID safety guidelines. We didn't want students gathering in lines and waiting in lines to build their own meals, which sometimes in the high school levels and the middle school levels are accustomed to, building a salad, building a sandwich, getting in a stir-fry line. Those things, which they obviously missed, would have caused a delay in lines, would have caused kids congregating, getting together on lines, which is something that we felt we didn't want them doing. For now, while the COVID health guidelines are asking us to. So, in the high school level, we narrowed it down to 4 meal choices on the first phase, which were the choices were choices that were easily packaged and transportable, such as chicken patty sandwiches, burgers, hot dogs, the daily special, grab-and-go salads, grab-and-go wraps, grab-and-go subs, things that you can just grab and go. Everything was inside your bag. So the students wouldn't be touching apples, touching an orange, reaching in a milk cooler, grabbing different things, and, possibly putting themselves against the health guidelines. In middle school, we have the same operation with the 4 meal choices. Where it narrowed down to less choices was the elementary schools, partly also because of the lunchroom setting that they have, and they're eating in the classroom, so they had to be items that would transport easily, that wouldn't spill over. We don't want the kids obviously making a mess in the classroom, but also burning themselves with hot items. We don't want to give them a soup or a chili or a pasta that they can spill over. They're all they were all items that were easily transportable and easier to consume in their classroom. Also, they usually have two hot choices, normally, two cold choices. We narrow it down to just one hot choice and one cold choice, a veggie choice, and if needed. The reason also because we didn't want students to change their mind when the meal arrived to their classroom, trade with another peer, and it would just cause more confusion and also cause would it be against COVID safety guidelines. Another factor that determined our phase one decisions was our nationwide supply chain shortages. As we all know, and you can see it in your local grocery store everywhere. We are dealing with that. I won't say we're not. We do have every single vendor right now, Cisco, US Foods, GFS. I mean, they're having problems with manufacturing certain items, more popular items. However, anytime there has been a supply chain shortage for our menus, we've always been able to substitute for something as acceptable or higher quality if possible. And phase two. So we moved to phase two in mid-September. Let's say around. It was like a week after Labor Day when we moved there. Phase two, we wanted to that would have been it's what we're going through right now. It's the period between the grab and go meals and the period between back to normal. So we transitioned from the paper bags or the grab and go bags to trays, to serving in trays. The reason we did that is because it would increase meal choices on the high school and middle school level. When we can put a slice of pizza on a tray, or we can put a pasta on a tray, we can put different items that are that can't travel in a bag. When we can put that in a tray, it definitely increases participation, interest in the meal service, and it keeps keeps the students engaged, that they will have more things to choose from, and especially things they do like. Another thing we added for phase two was we added the chocolate milk for the students. At first, we only had a white milk for the same reason, to avoid picking and choosing across the board. But we added chocolate milk because we thought it was safe to do so, and there were kids asking for it as well. On the elementary school level, we did add an extra cold option. We have a turkey sub and some butter and jelly sandwich, depending on what they want. But we're still just doing the daily special as long as the kids are in the classroom setting. We're keeping it with a one hot option. So phase two, like I said, I mentioned the chocolate milk. What are we doing to know what the students like and what they're looking for? Chocolate milk was one of the things that pertain to this. What we do is we monitor data on what's selling by production records. Production records are required by the USDA to keep for a food service program. In the production records, we can see what stations are selling, what's not, what's popular, what's not, and that's on the back end of it. But the most important part is the lunchroom observations and student conversations. Our staff, we train them to, and we don't even have to tell them. They're our frontline people. They are parents in the community. They're going to tell us if a child doesn't like something, if this didn't work out today, So we stay engaged with the students. Our cashiers talk with them. Our staff talks with them. And they've built trust with our staff that's been here for years to ask us, about items and when we can have this or what this item consists of. Any questions they have, they've built that trust too. Here's a sample menu from October, I'm sorry. Some participation of the Ssl Breakfast. Right now, the first, as of August 23, we did 10,886 meals, breakfast, and 38,169 lunches for September. Breakfast for September. For lunch, in August we did 26,585, and in September we did 75,961. EC snacks, In August, we did 1,235. In September, we served 4,635. Okay, so next step, phase 3, speaking, moving forward, as we're all working, towards the back to normal. And we continue to work with Dr. Kivens on that and how we're going to enter into phase 3. So one of the ways to enter phase 3 is obviously get more feedback from students to see what they want to see, what they want to try. We'll do that by doing what we've done before, focus groups, we've done surveys. We've done we can do student and or parent groups as well, if it's something that we think it would help us. Monitoring item sales, and also pre-COVID, around February 2020, we were planning a taste test with the students, which is something we've done in other districts as well, where we bring in a selected group of students based on your criteria. It could be the student council, it could be a club that's interested in it, and we just do a cooking expo where they can see how the meals are prepared in the back of the kitchen, and they can see, hey, they're actually adding fresh ingredients, they're doing this and that. They can see how their meals are being prepared. They can try and prep them too. We can teach them how to cook them if it's something that's feasible, and obviously make a thing out of it, make it fun for them, make it interactive so that, we can make it into some sort of contest and have participation prizes and all that. It just keep them engaged and have them see a behind the scenes look in the kitchen so they don't think it's just, school food, cafeteria food coming from who knows where, right? They get to meet our chefs, they get to meet Melissa, and most importantly, I think it's very important that they see the process of cooking the food. They see when we make the pizzas, we're bringing out fresh bell peppers, we're bringing out, fresh mozzarella, putting on top of the pizza. It's not just, what most people imagine it to be. And more importantly, for phase 3, we do want to bring back a la carte sales. We haven't brought those back because of the cash handling situation and COVID and kids gathering. On the middle school and high school levels, it's part of students love a la carte sales. They love, buying the smart snacks, the drinks, especially the cookies, which we brought some for you today. And when we do determine a date, our target month is February of 2022. But in order to promote the a la carte sales being back, we plan on giving a free cookie to all students that day. Middle school, high school, and elementary level. Although elementary level doesn't participate in a la carte, but just to be fair, we don't want to leave them out if it's something we can do. And yeah, so that, just to get them excited about those things being back and having them come to the lunchroom for more. As always, thank you for your partnership. Thank you. Like I mentioned in our pandemic recap, it's been a crazy 18 months, days of loss, uncertainty for a lot of us. But the silver lining at the end of it was that our staff is very appreciative of this district. Our company is very appreciative of this district, the way you treated our staff. Like, we're one of yours, we're part of it. Our staff, your staff. I thought it was amazing to see everyone step up to feed the community. It was very rewarding this past 18 months. And thank, Dr. Kivens. She was out there driving a box truck, putting stuff in her red Jeep. You just see her all over the place. Bus drivers, everyone. It was a team effort. This is not just about us today, but it's just also I want to remind them, that we really appreciate everything you guys did for us in the community. Thank you. Questions?
Any questions from the board? I was going to just throw out one. I know that we've had parent public comment, and even my student has mentioned it, that it seems like the food quality has been kind of up and down a little bit. What are we doing to address that, and how are we resolving that?
Can you hear me? Yeah. So when we do get comments, we get them through Dr. Kivens. Sometimes they come to us directly. We try to identify exactly where the problem is coming from. If it's something isolated at a certain school where something maybe got got prepared in the wrong way or something happened, and if it's something which is the best case scenario, we want to make sure that it's an isolated incident. Now, if it's something that's coming to us, from all areas, and it's the way we address it is we check our recipes with our chef, and we make sure we're doing taste tasting. We taste the food as well. Our chefs taste the food. I know some of our administration staff goes around to the school and tastes it. We want to make sure that if the student has a bad experience with the meal, that they can come to us directly when they have it. We can look at the meal and we can give them another one. It's not a problem. We can give them another one and then try to identify what the problem was so that we can fix it and it doesn't happen again.
Along those same lines, if a student gets a meal that they're not happy with, it's cold or whatever, are we encouraging, do we let our students know it's okay to bring it back?
Oh, definitely.
This way, you're notified of the food issue right away.
Yes, that's the best case. We want them to give it back. We want them to have a good meal, first of all. And if they can give it back to us, we're not, we're there just to give them a better meal or fix if it's cold, if it's, so we can identify what the problem was. It's harder when we hear later, and the food's been handed out already or it's been, days or something and we can't see something, but we definitely encourage them if something is wrong that they can come to the kitchen manager right away so that we can fix the problem.
How do we encourage them to do that? Because I know, my kid will be like, just throw it away, and then they'll come at home and complain. How are we encouraging them to do?
Well, we do let them know with the cashiers and the cooks. Like they usually come to us and tell us now if there's something that we have, if we can put up signage or anything, let them know. Then we're more than we're more than happy to. The end goal here is for them to have a good meal. So whatever you have to do, we can.
So I think Dr. Kibbins heard that feedback, so we can just, Pam, if you would just brainstorm, we want, many of our kids they're so respectful and kind and caring. Many of them don't want to maybe upset somebody or whatever, but if they know they can have the freedom to bring the meal back, in whatever way. So maybe you can just just brainstorm.
Or they don't want to upset other people. They'll come home and upset us.
Yeah.
True.
Like you said, the only way to know the problem and to isolate and to address it is when you know it firsthand. Instead of, like you said, the kids come home and they tell us, 3 days later at dinner, oh, lunch was terrible this day, and then it's hard to go back.
Just as an example, we've had instances where, just as a manufacturing error, a milk is bad, even though the data is okay, and everything's fine. And if they can tell us right then and there, we can see the rest that they're okay, obviously, to make sure it's good for the rest of the students. But it's the best case scenario is for them to be able to tell us right away and we can identify it.
I have one more. So we used to have in the district pre-COVID and even a little before that, they did an Iron Chef for the students. You encourage, nutrition and cooking. Are you looking to do something like that for the students again?
Yes, I mentioned something along the lines of that on our phase 3. We want to get feedback from them by also engaging with them. So by bringing them in, doing that expo cooking, we also want to teach them how to cook that dish. Make a contest out of it, and then making sure, we'll have judges, we'll have our corporate chef here. And these are things we've also done at other districts, which we were going to do pre-COVID, but March hit and yeah.
Okay, so that kind of ties. I heard you say that. I guess it was I was just using the verbiage more like Iron Chef, so that they would come up with a recipe, cook it, do the demo to a panel of judges, and
Yes, of course. Yeah.
Thank you.
Any additional questions?
Yeah.
Mr. Thank you.
Yeah, one of the challenges when you get a yearly review is everybody remembers the last 2 months. And they don't remember the 10 months prior to that, right? So I really appreciate, personally, you taking through the pandemic. And I think what we want as a district is happy kids so they don't come home and complain, right? But secondly, we want partners. And you've said that numerous times and you demonstrated it through the pandemic. Huge. We had a trailer that Organic Life, a big refrigerated trailer that Organic Life funded, and nobody else did that, by the way. No other school district that I knew of in the 13 counties did that. And because of that, the partnership, we were able to feed the community truckloads of food on a weekly basis. So thank you. It's a really big deal. Two is, do you know how you're trending for October versus September yet?
Not at this moment. No.
The third one is how is the supply chain affecting your ability to obtain high quality product? Because I know for us at the food bank, we're seeing food chain, it's a mess.
Oh, it's definitely affecting it. Every time we place an order, we have a 15-minute call with our sales rep. I don't have this. I don't have that. Can you take this? Luckily, the USDA has granted a waiver if you don't have something that meets the meal pattern. As far as there's no whole grain buns, but there's white buns, you can use them. Just document it. So it is what we're doing in case if that's the case. But we are never leaving an item out. If anything, we're bringing a more expensive item that's not a K through 12 food item in, and that's why there's the higher cost of the meal rate right now. So it is a higher cost on us, but it's something we have to do regardless to keep the meal pattern going.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right, next up we have our school improvement process presentation.
You do. Good evening. Dr. Rowling and I would like to present the school improvement process to you. For years, we've been bringing the school improvement plans to you, but we thought it would be nice if you learned a little bit about, what am I not hitting?
I don't know.
You can be my controller. Okay. So anyway, we thought it was important that you understand the process that all of the schools go through when they create a school improvement plan and what that has to do with our overarching continuous improvement process. So this is just kind of a little outline of our presentation. We're going to talk a little bit about the school improvement plans themselves and the different components, the school improvement goals that we have for this year, the school instructional leadership teams, and how we've changed those a little bit this year, we feel, to better impact the goals that we have, and then the continuous improvement process itself. Beep. The SIP process is a comprehensive collaborative approach to school improvement. This is overarching. Okay, and here we go. All of the school improvement plans are aligned to the district's strategic plan, and I'll get into this in a minute. They're all developed collaboratively, and by that I mean the school leaders coupled with their school improvement leadership teams, and in some cases, some of the schools take this to their school staff as a whole to get feedback, and then with district administrators, we all work together to create the building plans. The plans are a blueprint for a continuous improvement process. And then finally, for the schools that are identified by the state as targeted or underperforming, we must have school improvement plans written and board approved to upload to the state system where they are monitored 3 times a year by the state. And then we've aligned our in-district monitoring with that system so that everything is aligned and above board. Beep. Okay, moving on to the goals. This year, we have actually provided the schools with 3 goals. All of the schools have the same overarching goals. And you can see those there. I'm not going to read them to you, but what I'd like to do is provide you kind of some examples of what we mean. So we've highlighted, for example, in Goal 1, universal instructional and assessment practices. Some of the things that might fall under there would be things such as mastery learning, the assessment cycle,
responding to data, the feedback loop, and MTSS Tier 1 supports, just as an example. Now, goal 2 is something that leads more to do with behavioral and social emotional learning practices, which we know are so important this year especially. So that then goes into things like establishing routines, building good relationships, classroom management. And then finally, goal 3 is pretty self-explanatory, quite frankly. It's maintaining high expectations for academic and behavior performance. We also want to ensure that there is a respectful environment created and maintained between teachers and students, students and students, and between the staff and the other staff members. So those are the 3 overarching goals. In a minute, I'll explain what the schools do and how they actually kind of fine-tune their plans to meet the needs of their individual building while still working towards these goals. And these are the goals that allow all of us to work together to contribute towards the strategic plan. So what does go into a SIP? If you've looked at the SIPs that are going to be presented later this evening, you will see that everyone has, for example, goal 1. Then they have worthy targets. In some cases, there's only 1. And you'll notice in some plans, there are actually up to 3 worthy targets underneath 1 goal. These are the steps that the school feels they need to take to meet the actual goal. Under those worthy targets, there are specific actions that the school has decided they're going to actually do to meet their worthy target. You can see how this all builds. Each one of those actions must be measurable. It's generally a short-term action, so over the course of the year, you may see actions change because they have actually achieved what they set out to do, and they rewrite it or tweak it so that they can keep moving towards that goal. With the benchmark progress data, that's where we're actually looking at the data that they've collected to measure their actions to see if they're working towards success. And then finally, something we added this year that we've never had on the plans before is who's responsible for things. For example, if the school feels the district office needs to provide them with some support, they put it in there. We read those, we know how we can support them achieving their goals. What is the building administration responsible for? What is the staff responsible for? So we're actually assigning specific tasks to everyone so everyone plays a role in the actual strategic plan. Okay, and I'm going to turn this over to Dr. Rowling.
Good evening. So I'm going to go through more of the process portion of this. And I'm going to start with the school instructional leadership team, or what we call the SILT. In years past, buildings had one general SILT that would work to develop the actions, that would be reviewing data. We took an opportunity to retool that process a little bit and really kind of create 2 sub-teams that would lead up to one larger school improvement team. So we have really kind of 2 sides of the school improvement process in terms of looking at student behaviors and culture, and then the academic side. So we have the student behavior team. They would address where the targets and actions that lead towards those cultural or behavior items. And the student academic team is focused in on the teaching and learning side. Then they come together as one large SILT once a month to review large-scale items and to review data. We made this change to try to provide a level of specificity to those meetings so that effort is focused and that those people are really more embedded in one side of that process. We can move forward. So we want to make sure that all of our goals and worthy targets are connected to both the district strategic plan and those tactics that we're working on at the large scale, and also other district initiatives. We want all of these things working together for improvement throughout the district. And so the SIP process is a continuous improvement cycle, and we'll talk what that looks like. So we are reviewing these things regularly, and so each team meets once a month at the building level. The SBT, the SAT, and the SILT all meet once a month to review building level data, to review progress that they've made along the way. We do principal SIP data reviews. We align these with the state reporting windows, but that's an opportunity for us to get together at key times in the year, review data, and really have an improvement wrap session, essentially, providing principals the opportunity to collaborate and work together and hear from their peers. And then the SIP monitoring document, which we bring to you along those same review periods. And so that this year we'll do that in January, March, and in June. So looking forward, these are the things that we're working on to try to improve our process. We want to improve data review at principal meetings on a regular basis, bringing small chunks of data that are aligned to some of the things going on in the district. Increased collaboration between principals throughout the year. We had a SIP retreat afternoon a couple of weeks ago where principals got to sit down with their peers and review their SIPs, get feedback, and we were very purposeful about pairing the high school with, Ellis, I believe they were with. So we wanted to make sure that they were getting outside of kind of that normal middle schools go to high school. We want them to think differently. And then we're always on a mission to move from the traditional August to June improvement calendar to really making it a 12-month approach. And instead of trying to bring the updated SIPs in August, really writing those in the spring and then reviewing them again when we return with the teachers. So later this evening, the board will be asked to approve the school improvement plan for each of the schools. That's an action item farther down. Are there any questions?
I did have one. So I'm really appreciating like in number 3 where it's kind of high expectations versus high results, right? But there are elements in there to go ahead and measure the results. How do you know? So you can have improvement or you can have improvement, right? So it kind of depends. Is there do you have metrics in terms of when you know this is actually having these expectations or this lead measure is having a dramatic effect on the lag measure, right? How are you gauging that?
Yeah, so that's something we're always working on. Inside of the SIP, they have the benchmark data. We are actually going to be working this year with our tech team to try to build better internal data platforms. Why can't I think of the word, Beth?
Reports that will be
yeah.
For like Global.
Beth, can you talk into the microphone, please?
It's okay.
One such example is running record data. We benchmark our K through 2 students 3 times a year. So, and we have that data we did do it last year. We're doing it this year. So we can we know what the expected rate of growth is that's reading data. So we can measure that. We have map data that students are expected to hit certain targets. So we have that data. We have our standards-based grading where we can go in and look at standards. So there are multiple measures. And if you look at the school improvement plans, especially in the monitoring sections, I think this year especially, you'll see we really pushed our principals to look at their action steps and say, how are you going to measure this? Which is a little bit new, but that goes all the way down to the PLCs at the grade levels and then up to these SIL teams. So I think we've got a real good checks and balances. And as Dr. Mendoza said, if you don't monitor it, it doesn't happen. And I think we've built in a lot of monitoring so we can measure things. And if something's wrong or maybe the action step is not aggressive enough or needs to be tweaked, we have the ability to do that, which means that's why these plans are something that can continue on and they can keep tweaking them until we achieve the goals that we want to do that align with the strategic plan.
Yeah, and Mr. Jewett, at the end, I can't believe I'm saying this, but it's our 3rd year in being in a pandemic school year, right? So many of you remember we actually did these comprehensive data presentations to the board. You're going to see hard data at the end of the year when we have our success metrics how are we measuring success? You're going to see traditional things like you would normally. Now, I'm assuming we are going to do the IAR. It's like the elementary K-8 standardized test. We also have SAT. We're going to have that. We'll have math data. We're also going to have local data as well. So we feel like to create a picture of how we're performing. And again, I apologize. Sometimes we get a little bit technical. A running record is basically the identification of a student's reading level based on accuracy while the student is sitting with the teacher reading. So there's different ways we can measure it. So we're going to have all that. So I think I know what you're asking, and you'll see that as we wrap the year up and we present the student achievement presentation. We also have other metrics that are more, I wouldn't say anecdotal, but in order to get good results, we need to see good practices in the classroom. And the way we see good practices in the classroom is by doing walkthroughs. And we do walkthroughs. So we'll have some information on that too. So it'll be really comprehensive. I do have one last statement. I'm sorry, I'm struggling with this mask. I think my ears aren't in the right position on my head, so some masks work better than others. But the one thing we really focus on, and this is going to seem counterintuitive, is redundancy. If I'm a mental model person, so if you think of a triangle, and in the middle it says improvement, and on the top you have strategic plan, and in one corner you have school improvement plans where they're executing the plan in the buildings, and then the other triangle is administrator evaluation. We want all of those to be focused in the same areas, because then it just turns into we're checking boxes off lists. So for us, it's about making sure all of our arrows are going in the same direction. And frankly, while we try to do it, I think what we could do a better job, I could do a better job of tying some of the expenditures to our strategic plan. I mean, we see it on the memo, we do list it there, but we also try to align our financial decisions to what our priorities are. Strategic planning, other initiatives. So I think the last thing we want is for people to feel like they're doing busy work, which is why if you really dig in strategic plan, administrative evaluation, they have goals as well. Those goals are focused on getting to support the strategic plan, and then we have school improvement. We want all those working together. So that was maybe a little bit too much information, but I just wanted to share it.
Well, and specifically, you guys have supported a few positions that we're using in this effort. So we have a data specialist now who is working with principals and other administrators to identify what's being measured, how it's being measured, and being able to capture that. And then working with a member of the IC department, a data analyst, in order to craft visualizations and different reports so that principals can more easily run the data that they're identifying for measurement. So one of the problems we've had historically is we have data, but it's kind of all over the place. And so we're trying to consolidate that into like, okay, you're the principal of Beach Elementary School, click the button, here's your results for your school improvement plan, to try to make it as easy as possible for the SILT team, the SAT, the SBT, and then the principal teams to get together and review that. So that's not something historically we've done. So that's why we're utilizing those positions to really hone in on those measurement pieces, and quite frankly, identifying what's worth measuring, right? So what are the key indicators that we want to be looking at? Because sometimes historically we've looked at A when we really should have been looking at B. And so we're also going through that process.
Thank you. All right, next up is actually right in line with what we've been talking about. It's the Strategic Plan Monthly Report, which I think everybody could take a look at. Did anybody have any questions in regards to it? Again, well laid out and color-coded for us.
Michael, I think we do have an update or two, if that's okay. I know it's going a little bit long, but just to reaffirm, so if you think about the process Dr. Kiewitz and Rowing just described for the buildings, that's what this is. So the primary purpose of this monitoring document is just to reassure the board that we're spending time on the work. At the end of the year, we will have, we'll be able to monitor and share results with you regarding a variety of student achievement metrics. And in addition to that, some not necessarily all of them are standardized testing, but some are. So I'm going to just have look down the line here. So I'm going to start with Susan. Do you want to start?
No problem. So I'm just going to go through a couple of the monitoring pieces I want to draw attention to. One of them, actually, we just talked about, which is Theme A, Goal 4, which has to do with a comprehensive analysis of current student achievement. So we weren't able to really make a ton of progress on this one last school year because of the lack of testing sort of overall, the students not in our building. So we've been sort of working through that process. And one of the key pieces here with the SIP plans is identifying, as I just mentioned, what's worth measuring, right? So what are the important things that really identify both how our students are performing, but also how our teachers are doing relative to the processes that we want to embed. So we're looking at student achievement and program evaluation. So we want to do both things. The other part I want to identify or talk about quickly is Theme B, Goal 1, Unique Needs of Learners. This has to do with the MTSS process. This is something we've spent a lot of time over the pandemic. So multi-tiered systems of support, probably should mention, that's what MTSS stands for. And what that is to identify students who are struggling in the classroom academically and or behaviorally, and then provide tiered support, right? So Tier 1 is universal, stuff that's done in the classroom. Tier 1, small group. Tier 3, individual type support. So one of the areas we focused on a lot for this return to school, knowing how our students would struggle after being out of school for 18 months for a variety of reasons, was to really focus on supporting teachers in the classroom at that Tier 1 level. We're doing that. We've built out a lot of supports for teachers. We're implementing them and trying to support them, and we're really trying to make sure we're data gathering on those interventions as needed to make sure we know what the kids what they actually need, not what we thought they might need coming back, what they actually need, and then providing appropriate support. Just a couple more, Mary, I'm sorry. So C3, which is social emotional development, we are looking at a comprehensive study of discipline expectations. So one of the areas our teachers are struggling with this year, and again, to be expected, right, is behaviors, right? Students been out of school for a very long time. And so whether it's the young kids who are not used to the structure maybe of the day, or older students who have sort of been on their own for 18 months and kind of are like, I don't want to have to ask to go to the bathroom right now because, I didn't have to for 18 months. I'm trying to build through some of those things. So looking comprehensively at what our discipline procedures are, as well as our policies in terms of like the student handbook and like how we're categorizing discipline and where we want to move forward. We're definitely wanting to look more into relational behavioral practices, restorative practices in support of our kids and their needs, especially with the social emotional needs as high as they are following the pandemic. And the last piece, of course, is we're keeping on with equity. As I'm sure you know, lots of training still ongoing. It's been really fantastic. And just making sure that we're being honest and good supporters of equity since we've engaged in this process, that we're doing it with sort of like truth and integrity, and making sure that as we move forward, we're looking to support teachers, administrators, students, and just do our best, like I said, with sort of being honest about where we are and what are the things that we need to grow and improve on.
Just two that I would like to highlight. One is the continue to work with the HR department to work with the historically black college and universities, and also a new effort to do a possible virtual teacher recruitment effort with the university. The main ones that I'd like to highlight today are the focus on the facilities. Two things you're going to see later tonight is we are recommending a vendor for the RFP for the Guaranteed Energy Service Contract, or ESCO, and we hope to enter into that contract in November. This ESCO is going to focus primarily on roofing and HVAC lighting areas within the district. Also, coming up in November, you're going to see a identified list of large-scale projects that the district is focusing on that is connected to the large range facilities plan and utilizes the asset calc priority system largely to identify which ones we are doing.
And I have just 2 points under theme D I'd like to highlight tonight. So this week we're going to be putting out a parent needs assessment survey. The last time we did this with parents was August 2019. So things have changed a little bit between then and now. We think we have a good idea on what parents are feeling at this time, but we want to make sure that we're in the right place and providing the correct resources and utilizing the proper communication methods that their expectations and needs are being met. So this is based off of just some of our work that we know as a district we need to continue to investigate, but also based off of some of the feedback that we've gotten from our staff who have participated in the Action Faction Community Connections work. They've had a portion of that group has been working on this idea of providing resources to our families in a simplified way over the last year. And we're just trying to support that endeavor to make sure that, again, we're meeting the needs and expectations of our parents. And then the other part is our social media internship development plan. So we've had a couple meetings on that so far and have partnered with one of the teachers here at the high school to see how we might be able to utilize students in furthering our social media presence, specifically at the high school. And we think this will be beneficial to us as a school district and school to have a viewpoint of or the perspective of a student and what interests them, and also for them to learn and have exposure to some other social media opportunities through that internship program. So we have another couple meetings to go on that still, but with the intention of hopefully opening this up for application for the second semester for our students.
Good evening. The technology department typically serves the needs of all of our stakeholders across the district from all the organizations you just heard from. What that means is we typically don't have a specific technology goal, but we partner to deliver and enable the goals that have already been defined. The one I was going to highlight has actually already been highlighted by Dr. Center, and that is goal 4 under teaching and learning, theme A. And as was mentioned already, Dr. Center and I and our organizations collaborated to bring in 2 ESSER-funded positions, a data analyst and a data specialist in each of our areas to work together to deliver the data dashboard, as we call it, that will enable the SIP plans, give tools to those that help monitor that goal as it moves forward. Thank you.
Any questions?
I just have one. For Heather, with the social media type one, is that more to be like a class or is it designed like a club? I'm just curious.
So to start out, it won't be credit bearing. Obviously that needs a full course proposal.
Yeah, that's why I'm asking.
So this is just an introduction to that, and just seeing what opportunities exist for second semester and bringing that back for a full course proposal whenever the time is right for that.
So more of a social media influencer type.
Yeah, I kind of like that description actually to start out. Yeah.
There you go.
Sounds good. All right. Thank you, everyone. Next up, we've got more disposal of materials.
This is just the once a month where we come and say we're going to dispose of some things. Any questions? Okay.
Thank you. All right. Next on the agenda was contracts under 1,000. I see nothing there, so unless I am incorrect, we will move on there. FOIA report. Everyone had the opportunity to review the FOIA report. Any questions in regards to the FOIA? All right. Next up then is this will be fun. Review of the proposed resolutions for the 2021 Delegate Assembly. I know everyone got sent this, so they should have had a chance to review it, and we can go over it line by line if need be, or I'm thinking maybe a better way would be we can bring up, everyone knows what ISB is supporting and opposing when it comes to the resolutions. I know myself, I have 4 that I tend to disagree with ISB's with their selections. So I'll throw out my 4, and then we can kind of go around the table and talk about anybody else's. I'll start with 2 that kind of lump together: clean energy infrastructure federal funding and electric school buses charging stations federal funding. They are going with to oppose that. I personally am on the other side of that. I would say that we should be going out and trying to have that happen. So I'll open the conversation up for those 2.
I actually was going to bring those up too. I was wondering what your guys' thoughts were on those because I wasn't certain why we would not want to support that.
The ones I'm talking about are, unfortunately, it's number 11 and number 12. Not that it's 11 and 12 in the order that they gave it to us. It's like numbers. Hold on. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, they're numbered, but it's still fun to make fun of them that number 7 is 11. So, and number 9 is 12. But yeah, again, in reading the resolution, the reason that they're opposing it is that they feel that that there are already incentives out there, so they don't necessarily feel like more incentives. And on top of that, some areas just don't have the ability for it at this moment, which is fair. But at the same time, I'm going to throw it out there that I think we should always look for that. But that's just me.
I was kind of in agreement with you on that too. It wouldn't hurt.
I'll just open it up to everyone else. Where does everybody? Because again, we speak as a board, so the majority of the board is going to choose what our board's position is. So this is not directed by 1 or 2 people.
The clean energy I support with you guys. The electric school bus charging station federal funding. I'm all for electric cars. But I understand their rationale for not adopting it. Looking at the state of Illinois south of Chicago. And also, are there any electric buses?
At this moment, no. But again, that's where I would make the argument that that's what this should be conversation. The conversation should be of making that available to districts. But again, this is not 1 or 2 people. We need to come to a consensus on those 2. We can come back and kind of any of them that we determine that we need to talk about and make a quote unquote vote to determine. And these 2 would be one of those that we need to vote. We can talk about that afterwards. Anybody else have other ones that they feel differently than what ISB's recommendations were?
I want to talk about number 2, the student safety and protection plan. I know you knew I was going to bring it up. I really would like to hear what the board's thoughts on this is. I'm deeply conflicted about this one.
So then you're not in favor of the recommendation?
To have a dialogue around it first.
I'll go ahead and throw out there. I'm actually, I'll step out there. I'm not in favor of that one just because, in my humble opinion, more guns is never the answer. So that's just me. I understand when it comes to every district gets to make its own choice, and this is protecting each individual district's choice. We've had this conversation before. We voted on it, and we've had that discussion in prior ones. I will just say, for me personally, more guns is never the answer, and I don't necessarily feel comfortable having our students potentially going to other school districts that may select to have it, where their staff is licensed and registered to handle firearms. On top of that, I don't know that putting yet another burden on staff and teachers, especially a burden as cumbersome as controlling a firearm, is the right thing for our staff and our students, or any staff and any students. That's my personal opinion.
This has been a hot button for a little while, and they're still back and forth on this. I'm actually going the other way. I mean, it's about choice. It's not that we're going to adopt it anytime soon. I understand what you're saying, but at the same token, these rural districts have a really good argument for that, and they have for a long time. So I would go on the other side.
I agree. Like I said, this has come up to the delegate assembly a few times. Was it? I'm trying to think. 2 years ago. Is it 2 or 3 years ago?
2, 3, and 4. This is the third or fourth time that's come up.
Right. I agree with.
Okay, we'll come back and we'll put that one on the vote table. So we've got the run votes for 11, 12, and 2. The only other one I had was number 15, child safe gun storage. And again, I'm going to disagree with them and say we should advocate for child safe gun storage. But again, I understand that it definitely does feel like an overstep of a district's responsibility. So I'll just put it out there.
So for that one, I actually agreed with them. I thought it was not the school's place to comment on that. But I do know why you're saying that. I mean, for obvious reasons, we want our kids safe, but I feel like it's a parental issue more than the school.
Absolutely. So again, So I hear that. Does anybody else have any others of the rest of them? I can run through real fast and kind of go over it. Looks like 7 and 6 ISB supported. 8, 16, and 3 they were opposing. 10 they support. 4 they support. 14 and 13 they support. 1, 5, and 9 they support. 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, and 23 all support. Does anybody have any questions or challenges to their support and opposition of those that we have not discussed? I'm going to tend to agree with you. I am utterly confused by that, especially when you turn around and in number 3 they're opposing school member compensation. So I didn't completely understand that. Other than what I did read of it was, in order to be able to assist with you being able with those who are elected to the board to be able to have childcare and help pay for the childcare during a board meeting, during a III, during a National School Board Association meeting, when you're on board business, so to speak, having the availability for the district to compensate it, just like the district does for our travel expenses, just like they do for mileage, continuing education, etc.
Their rationale was that it could disenfranchise people from wanting to volunteer in the positions that they didn't have with the funds to cover the child care. I actually thought that was because of COVID. Like before this, I would have been like, no way. But now that there's been a change in everything, I think I could see why the rationale.
Did that help answer your? Okay, is that so? Is that one that Okay, thank you. Nope, that's great. Let's do it.
What did you? Are you for the recommendation or against? I did. Scott. Oh.
What number was that one again? Oh, 4. Okay, so I'm seeing that at this point, and I don't want to disenfranchise anyone. I know, Miss Lee, I haven't really heard from you. Ms. Larson, I haven't necessarily heard from you. And surprisingly, Ms. Ready again.
You're saying I'm boisterous? Well, I think we've hit all the ones that I think, well, at least.
So what you're saying is I talk too much. Got it.
No, I would just say the board member child care reimbursement, our board would still have to budget and go along with that. Correct. If it were to pass.
Correct. Okay, so then to make sure that I am keeping it honest, I am seeing that we need to have a roll call vote on yay or nay, whether we support or oppose numbers 11, 4, 12, 15, and 2. Does anybody have one that I have missed or that they still would like to bring up? And I apologize to everyone watching on YouTube wondering why we're talking in number order of 11, 4, 12, 15, and 2, but that's just the way it's listed on the resolution sheet. All right, hearing no other conversation, then I will ask that we get a roll call vote for each of these as to whether you support or oppose the resolution. And then the majority will determine our board's position as to supporting and opposing. And then we will adopt IASB's support and opposition of all the other ones based on how they stated it. We will vote on these 5 unless someone has an additional question. Hearing none, let's start then with number 11, the Clean Energy Infrastructure Federal Funding.
As we go through these, can we go back to what we're, okay.
Yeah. And again, Clean Energy Infrastructure Federal Funding, ISB's position is to oppose. So let me get a roll call of support, just to do support or oppose.
Support the recommendation or support the bill? The bill.
That's a great question.
So, I just want you to be
Yeah, no, I appreciate that clarification. How do we want to do it?
We're going yes
just
for
so we
position,
know,
no for no position.
Francisco, we don't have this as an action item. So I think maybe if we can get a list of,
good, thank you.
This way we can all review it and have some time to digest.
I love that idea.
And we'll bring it back at the next
first board meeting.
The first board meeting in November as an action item.
I love that. Perfect. See, excellent. Thank you. Let's move on. All right, next up is public comment then. All right, members of the public may participate in public comment during regular board meetings by attending in person or by submitting an electronic public comment form. Please note that speakers are limited to 3 minutes. A link to the electronic public comment form can be found in the documentation. Electronic public comments will be accepted up until the time the board reaches the public comment section of the meeting agenda, which is now. Do we have any electronic public comments? Hearing no electronic public comments, I'll ask, do we have any public comments? Seeing none of that, we will move on, and next up is committee reports and the Finance Committee update.
Oh, is that me? All right, finance. We had a pretty full agenda. And let me just get to the right spot. One of the first thing we have, as you heard in the strategic update and in other areas, school technology fees. As you might recall, prior to the pandemic, the board talked about the fees and what we would assess our families with the iPad as we were moving to the, full one-to-one. Obviously, the pandemic has changed our shift with iPads, and it's really not a choice, but mandatory tool now with e-learning and the shift that, the pandemic has taken, all districts. With that, because it will be a mandatory tool for our children, it becomes a waivable fee. It's no longer, before when we talked about this, building into the budget, it wasn't waivable. The parents, would be assessed that fee. But now it can be considered a waivable fee. When we talked about that technology fee, that was adding about $350,000 into the budget to support the technology budget for the iPads. Obviously, with it being waivable, it's about 40% that will be waivable. We've asked the administration to go back into building that budget to support that line item. Obviously, the pandemic has made that shift for us. We just need to adapt to it.
Question on that. So are we saying that we're looking at making that retro for this year where we actually, because we basically had the no fees this year, would that mean no technology fees this year?
No,
I'm just
because
looking for the clarification.
yeah. So when the board graciously supported the fee waiver, I'm sorry, I don't want to confuse it. The registration fees, that's a different bucket from the tech fee. We are given the fact that we just started the fee waiver process. We do believe, unless I'm wrong, that we can execute that this year. So we do plan on allowing families to waive the tech fee with appropriate documentation. And then our plan is to build that in as part of a budget assumption when we bring the budget development to you to show you how we're accommodating for that loss of revenue. At the Finance Committee meeting, Dr. Kibbins, so essentially if all 7,000 students paid the $50 fee, do the math, $350,000, we believe roughly 40%-ish will be eligible for the fee waiver. So you can do quick calculations. So we'll come and bring that back as a budget assumption so that you know how we're offsetting the loss of revenue.
Thank you for that clarification.
Can we use ESSER funding for any of that?
Yes, we could. So if you wanted us to collectively consider that, we could. I think we can, why don't we just assume we will revisit that? So when we had to submit the ESSER grant, it was for 2 years because we have this year and next school year, and the funds have to be encumbered up to a certain point. So what we can do is, when we build the budget for ESSER, there's a budget and then there's an actual. For example, when we budget for positions, that may not be the actual. So as a team, we can just go in and look at that and see how it does. I think the team did a really good job. Mary, Susan, her teams, Pam, of being intentional with how we were using those funds. Bottom line is it's not a ton of money in a relative sense, but if we put that in, we just got to move something out, or maybe something comes in under budget. So.
Yeah, and there's, as we go through this, there's other items as we talk to in regards to the ESSER funding and our buckets, so to speak, which I'll get to in a second. But as you heard Dr. Mendoza say, spoke regarding the technology fee, when we planned and designed, it was pre-pandemic. Pandemic is giving us a shift, so we're adjusting accordingly. No, it's a good question. Next is the District 1 contract, which is on the regular agenda later this evening. This is something the Finance Committee does not support and does not recommend for the board to pass. This is a sponsorship program contract. The Finance Committee's stance on this is bringing a sponsorship program with no plan in place. We do know that they are working on one, but to accept and ratify a contract and we don't know what that plan looks like would not be in line with our goals. Also, if you look into the details of that contract, they're wanting to put banners, hand out promotional material, scripted public announcements, it's very detailed, which is great, but how does that fit with our goal and our vision? When the facilities committee worked with the design and the implementation of that field and the scoreboard, we had thought out and talked about what that sponsorship program should look like. This contract is not in line with that. So we don't recommend the approval of that. Any questions on that? Okay, I'll go to the next one. As we talked about the budget, Dr. Lamping has come up with a 2021-2022 large-scale project identification. As you know, there are many needs of the district. The first one being Beach Elementary, the classroom library build-out. Beach classrooms and libraries, they don't have walls, they have half walls, and there's no doors to their classrooms. Using ESSER 2 funds, they have allocated $2.3 million to put classrooms and build out that library. So it's also in line with the LLC, Limited Learning Commons. Limitless.
We're not limiting.
We're not limiting, yes. Limitless learning. Sorry. So the question the Finance Committee had, when the budget was brought to us just not that long ago, and we looked at the allocations of money of ESSER, was that included? That $2.3 million, that's a big dollar amount of our ESSER funding. And they assured me that has been accounted for in that.
The ESSER grant, right?
Yes, that had been accounted for when we saw that budget. Murphy School, the Murphy concrete parking sidewalk. If anyone has been at Murphy, it's a mess. It is really a safety hazard for the students, the staff, or just people in our community who take walks around that facility. That is an anticipated cost of $800,000. And as you know, we have the asset calc that we approved to keep track of our facilities. It does rate 89.9 out of 100, so it's pretty high on the list. Now, Dr. Lampy will be coming to the board later and using possibly using some local funds. And again, I'm going to go into greater detail with some of the budget and funding. Ellis Playground, asphalt. Again, the asphalt around the playground area, tripping hazard, it's a safety issue, especially with it being the playground. Again, that is an 84.9 out of 100 in the asset calc. And that is an anticipated cost of $43,000 coming out of the O&M budget, or Dr. Lamping's budget. Beach asphalt parking lot. Again, that parking lot is in great disrepair. Again, cracking, holes into it. It's causing drainage issues. Again, that's going to be at a cost of $69,000. That rates an 85.9 out of 100 out of the asset calc. Fire panel and sprinkle system warehouse. This is our new purchase, the warehouse that we recently purchased. This would be taken out of life safety. Of course, that building needs to meet certain regulations as we take ownership for the property that we will hold in it, and that will come out of life safety. Beach, Indian Hill, and Ellis fire alarm systems. Again, they're very antiquated systems where we can't get parts anymore. The cost at this time is unknown as they go out, I guess, for bid for those. Again, priority score is a 90.9 out of 100, but it will be coming out of life safety. The softball field here at the high school, I can speak from experience for my daughter. The field is in bad shape. It definitely needs some repair. It's also not a secured structure. It is an anticipated cost of $56,000. The baseball field as well. Again, same thing. Pitcher's mound. The surface, warning track. Those are all in desperate need for safety for those fields. We are bringing in our architect of record in to look at those facilities, and we're awaiting some feedback from the architect. The stadium sound, as you know, we've moved our graduations back to our beautiful athletic facility. However, that stadium and sound was more designed for athletic events, not for a graduation. So to bring that sound system to the need for non-athletic events is $67,500. Dr. Lamping's original request was taking it out of O&M. As I reviewed the treasurer's report for this month and looking at this long request of facility needs and things that need to happen, Mr. Javert and I looking at the budget, some of these projects, we have a capital funds balance in there for a reason. Specifically, the stadium sound should come out of that bucket, so to speak. The monies that have been allocated out of the capital fund project, that meets that criteria, that frees up that money out of Dr. Lamping's direct budget. So that was one of the observations from finance. Phone wall relocation. Again, the phones in our classrooms, they're in different places depending on building and teacher. We wanted to keep them all centrally located on the wall when you walk into the classroom, so nobody walks into a classroom. Where's the phone? It's all in one area. That is $250,000, and that will come out of ESSER 3. So as you heard us talk about, the budget, we have such as you heard the dollars amounts and the needs of things that need to happen in the district. In reviewing the treasurer's report, we posed some questions to administration regarding the allocation of funding. And there's going to be one in here a little later that I'll wind up coming back again with the budget. But as we look at these, the budget and building needs, and we looked at band uniforms, athletic uniforms, HVAC facilities, the use of asset calc to help drive where our needs are and the priority. We need to build our budget around some of these cyclical items. We are not doing that. So the Finance Committee has asked administration to start taking those into account as the board makes these investments into the athletic fields, softball, baseball, and the whole host of items that you heard us list. We make that investment, but how do we protect that investment? How are we planning to maintain that investment? The analogy we use is, we don't buy a car and never do the oil change the tires and all that stuff. We still need to do that with these projects. So we need to make sure that we're budgeting and planning for those as well.
So can I piggyback?
Yep.
So, and this is so building the replacement cycle is actually the easy part. So we're in a position now with asset calc. We've got an open door with the ESSER funding to do some level of facility work. But in the end, even after the cycle's developed, the board is going to have to make decisions on how are we going to allocate the funds. We build our budget we don't have a ton of cushion in the budget. So for example, Mary has an operations budget. We do have a capital improvement account. But if you start, I think you all remember, Asset Calc showed like over $60 million in facility needs. So when we start talking about facilities and maintaining, and in the end, we're going to build a really good cycle for you to consider. But when you start thinking of what's in Asset Calc, and then you start thinking of EEC expansion I've talked to you about, we've got to bring our kids back from Pleviac, you've got the Welcome Center, the church renovation, we need a parking lot. You know, at the end of the day, this is going to be how do we want to allocate the funds and how are we going to pay for it. So there's only so many ways to do it. You can reduce and reallocate funds in certain areas, or you can decide, do we want to use some of our savings? Very similar to what you did with the athletic field, right? I mean, that was basically, look, we have a serious need, and we absolutely did. And I think the community is so proud of it, so am I. It's amazing. So what I'm planning on doing is we build the budget for next year. Believe it or not, Pam, we probably start doing that next month. We started having those discussions. I can't even believe it. But we will build cycles with some of these things. You guys will be able to see them. I think maybe we'll have like a work session, because at the end of the day, we're going to give you a menu of options, and you're going to have to decide, what do we want to do and how do we want to pay for it? We are fiscally healthy, but we're not in a position where some, neighboring districts have 150% fund balances. Like legitimately, some have 200%. We're really good. We've stewarded our resources. You've done an amazing job with that. So this will be in line with that. So just kind of start thinking about that. So you'll take this really big holistic look. You're going to see a lot of needs with, relatively speaking, fairly limited resources. So just kind of preparing you for that.
Yeah, but just to reiterate, the finance committee thinks it's important, because we don't want to be in the positions this district has been in the past, where we have all these needs we can't even think to support them because we haven't budgeted for or thought about them. They're going to be tough conversations to have, but we need to have them. Next is the huddle contract. This again is also on the agenda later as well. It's for $50,000. Again, this is used by the athletic department. This will be a 3-year contract. It's software students use to create that content, as we talked about, for college recruitment. Football, and them used to review games and that stuff. There is no data. I don't think it's included in the full board agenda, but it has been supplied at finance. The use and how do we keep making it better use for our students. AV improvements for the high school theater and stadium. As we know, the high school theater sound system is antiquated at best. It's not great. Dan has done a great job in bringing in a contractor and having them look at what we have and what could be salvaged or not. And of course, nothing could be salvaged because it's so old. They did break it out into 3 phases: phase 1, phase 2, phase 3. Phase 1 at an approximate cost of $222,502 is phase 1. And as you heard me talk about, finance has been reviewing the budget. Again, we see this great need that the district has. It is a project finance think it's worthy of the district to support and for us to do. But again, how do we fund it? Because this would be a 3-phase project. Phase 1 again being $222,000, phase 2 $46,000, and then phase 3 $8,000. So again, in going over in great detail with the budget with Dr. Kibbins, there is a healthy portion that we can support, but there's about 80,000 that they're short on. So we've asked them again to go back and see where we can do some cost shift so that this possibly can be done. Again, the stadium sound, as you heard, it's 67,000. Again, in looking at the budget, really think it should come out of the capital funds. And then moving on to independent contractor agreement, which again is on the agenda for later today, is Fernie Ramirez. This is the BPAC presenter. I know I've seen one of his presentations. He does a great job. So that will be up for recommendation. It is at a cost of $2,500, and it is funded out of Title III grant.
Yeah, Nat. Yeah. Was there a recommendation on the huddle contract from the finance committee?
Yeah, we're in favor. That's good. Sorry if I wasn't clear on that. Next is the request for the Guarantee Energy Savings Contract vendor. If you remember 2 board meetings ago, we were talking about going out for an RFP in regards to HVAC and some other needs of the district. On the agenda later today, it will be a motion, and the Finance Committee agrees with the approval of the one vendor. The 2 came, one vendor actually submitted their bid. I also have the chance to vet and go over this vendor, and we feel comfortable with the recommendation of the vendor. So on the agenda later is the approval of the vendor, not the project yet, but the vendor. Of course, we had Organic Life, and we've already heard from them, so thank you, and thank you for the cookie. BR&G consulting contract. This is the consulting contract that we use for Medicaid. This is an outside firm that we use. And the only question that the Finance Committee came up with in reviewing the contract was the data integrity with sharing of student information. That is not mentioned in the contract. Dr. Apgar did reach back out to finance because we also wanted to make sure it was in line with SOPA, I don't know how I put that little Spanish on it, but it's the Student Online Personal Protection Act. Wanted to make sure that they are in line with that. They are, so they did get that noted, and they did get that on the contract. So that's, again, later in agreement for approval. And I think that's it. Did I miss anything?
No.
Thank you. That was a lot.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, next up is the superintendent's report. Dr. Mendoza.
Thank you, Board President Francisco and Board of Education. Parent-teacher conferences will be held this week. All conferences will be held via Zoom. For your convenience, we've listed the time windows, which are Thursday, October 21st from 8:45 a.m. to 8 p.m. and Friday, October 22nd, 8:45 a.m. to 12:30 p.m. Illinois Association of School Board Recognition Awards. Last week, our board had the opportunity to attend the Lake Division dinner meeting. This was a great opportunity for school board members to come together once again to continue their professional development while networking with other members across Lake County. A portion of the meeting was reserved to acknowledge board members who had reached milestones in their work toward Master Board Member status and or Leadership Academy Recognition Awards. I'd like to take some time this evening to recognize progress our board continues to make in their commitment to continued professional development. I'd like to personally thank the board for their commitment. It is not, I think some of what you see at that meeting is not normal. The fact that you're committed to your craft and you're not even being paid for it is, I know, right? So just personally wanted to thank you. Kevin DeVera, congratulations. Master Board Member maintained. Michael Francisco, congratulations to you. Master Board Member status maintained. Annette Negretti McGinley, congrats to you. Master Board Member maintained. Jennifer Klingler, congratulations on being a new Master Board Member. Congrats. And last but certainly not least, Scott Jewett, level 2 of Master Board Member status. Congratulations to the full board.
Is that, oh, you good?
Oh, and lastly, sorry, I had a little just, no, yeah, I was waiting for the speech. No, I don't have any other formal things on there, but for your convenience, we did give you 2 maps. I believe Ms. Calise distributed those. Those are essentially the same routes at different, what's the term? One's more zoomed in than the other one.
And the one focuses more on the McGee section versus the whole city.
We attended a meeting last week with the Lake County Transportation Department. Dr. Lamping was present. Dr. Kibbins was present. They gave us an update. We will continue to update the board, I think, in the next week. Maybe we'll try this week. We'll have Dr. Kibbins and Dr. Lamping provide Heather with an update for your weekly, just to give you a status report. It does look like this is the recommended choice in where they're probably headed. So I just, again, without making assumptions, but it's a 3 to 5 year window of time. But again, we just wanted to keep you abreast of that, and if we have additional meetings, we'll keep you posted on where they're at with it.
And just I'm asking as a clarification, because I did see this as a quote-unquote breaking, that this is the adjusted eastward move, I believe it was, that they said.
This is the final that they're presenting to their last meeting. So they're not anticipating any changes to this.
Okay, because I saw one this morning that IDOT said that there were protected houses and now they're having to reshift.
We haven't heard anything. Okay. So what they did tell us was no news means this is what's going to happen. If something changes, they'll let us know. And Mary, if we could find out, I know there's one more public meeting. If we could get that date from them, we'll get it from Steve from Round Lake. We can get it to you if you wanted to attend.
They did say that if there was going to be any changes, they didn't anticipate it was really going to impact McGee. It might impact somewhere else on the map, but they didn't anticipate it would change what is presented to you.
Yeah, what I read was that it actually is going to shift it basically where it won't mess with the village hall, and now it's going to have to shift down. So that was what the news that was in the Daily Herald today. That IDOT came back with something that in the initial, there are houses that may be eligible for the historic register that weren't originally reviewed.
I do recall them saying I do recall that for some reason, the National Historical Register. I'm also showing this to our transportation director just to make sure the buses can make the swing. They did say that if we wanted to shift it a little bit to the to the north, so it'd be easier for the buses, they would help accommodate that.
Thank you. All right, now we are moving on to the approval of open meeting minutes.
All right, I need a motion to approve the minutes of the October 4th, 2021 regular board meeting.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Francisco, seconded by Mrs. Klingler. Any questions? Roll call.
Mrs. Klingler?
Yes.
Mr. Jewett?
Yes.
Mrs. Larson?
Yes.
Miss Lee? Yes. Mr. DeVera?
Yes.
Mr. Francisco?
Yes.
Mrs. McGinley?
Yes.
Motion passes.
All right, need a motion to approve the consent agenda for the employment report as listed, the accounts payable report in the amount of $464,287.61, the previous motions report in the amount of $295,110.67. September 2021 Treasurers Report and the September P-Card Report.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Devera, seconded by Mrs. Klingler. Any questions? Roll call, please.
Mrs. McGinley,
Yes.
Mr. Francisco,
Yes.
Mr. DeVera,
Yes.
Miss Lee,
Yes.
Mrs. Larson,
Yes.
Mr. Jewett,
Yes.
Mrs. Klingler.
Yes.
Motion passes.
I need a motion to approve Mr. Scott Jewett as the delegate and Mrs. Jennifer Klingler as the alternate for the 2021 Joint Annual Conference Delegate Assembly.
So moved.
Okay.
Motion by Mr. Francisco, seconded by Mr. Devera. Any questions? Roll call, please.
Mr. Jewett,
Oh, yeah.
Mrs. Klingler,
Oh, yeah.
Mrs. Larson,
Yeah.
Miss Lee,
Yes.
Mr. DeVera,
Yes.
Mr. Francisco,
Yes.
Mrs. McGinley.
Yes.
Motion passes.
I need a motion to approve the Board of Education 2022 NSBA National Conference travel and related expenses estimated at an amount of $10,955,000.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Jewett, seconded by Mrs. Klingler.
$10,955.
Yeah, I heard that second thousand. Yeah.
You said 900,000.
Yeah.
It's
Okay.
late.
We have the motion. We have a second. We've answered questions and roll call, please.
Mr. Francisco,
Yes.
Mrs. McGinley,
Yes.
Mr. DeVera,
Yes.
Miss Lee,
Yes.
Mrs. Larson,
Yes.
Mr. Jewett,
Yes.
Mrs. Klingler.
Yes.
And motion carries.
Yes, yes, thank you. I need a motion for the approval and adoption of Board Policy 7:180, prevention of and response to bullying, intimidation, and harassment.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Francisco, seconded by Mrs. Larson. Any questions? Roll call, please.
Miss Lee,
Yes.
Mr. DeVera,
Yes.
Mr. Francisco,
Yes.
Mrs. Klingler,
Yes.
Mrs. Larson,
Yes.
Mr. Jewett,
Yes.
Mrs. Mrs. Klingler, right? Who'd I miss?
Sorry. I don't know.
Motion carries.
All right. I need a motion for the approval of district retention awards totaling $851,750.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Mrs. Klingler, seconded by Mrs. Larson. Any questions? Roll call, please.
Mrs. Klingler,
Absolutely, yes.
Mr. Jewett,
Yes.
Mrs. Larson,
Yes.
Miss Lee,
Yes.
Mr. DeVera,
Yes.
Mr. Francisco,
Yes.
Mrs. McGinley.
Yes.
Motion carries.
I need a motion for the approval of independent contractor agreement with Dr. Fernie Ramirez for the services rendered as presenter of 5 bilingual parent advisory committee parent universities in the 2021-2022 in the amount of $2,500.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Jewett, seconded by Mr. Devera. Any questions? Roll call, please.
Mrs. McGinley,
Yes.
Mr. Francisco,
Yes.
Mr. DeVera,
Yes.
Miss Lee,
Yes.
Mrs. Larson,
Yes.
Mr. Jewett,
Yes.
Mrs. Klingler.
Yes.
And motion carries. On District 1 contract, I think that the administration has something they wanted to bring up before we start the motion.
Just Kurt, let me just say, Kurt is going to share some detail. We know the Finance Committee doesn't support the recommendation. Just high level, when this came through did not frankly align with our completion of our comprehensive sponsorship plan. So I think the spirit of it was positive, the intent was positive, but honestly, there's priorities. I just want you to know we understand. So, Kurt, you can give a little bit of background, but I think, you don't have to get into all the detail.
Sure. So District 1 is a company that represents Kia. They approached the athletics department. We worked with the business department to work through the contract language. They proposed a $2,000 I'm sorry, it's been a long day. They proposed a $2,000 deal where we would provide some signage and some announcements and some social media posts throughout the year. It's something to do with a number of local high schools, and so we brought that forward. We did try to work it through with one meeting simply because our last home football game is Friday. So, are there any questions?
My question would be: I know that we have not seen it, but where does this sponsorship, so however you want to name it, but where does this sponsorship fit into the pending plans for sponsorship? So, what level and or
So I didn't bring it with me. I'm sorry, I don't have it right in front of me. But the draft levels start out at 1,500, 2,500, 5,000. Or I'm sorry, what is it?
1,500, 2,500, 3,500, and 5,000.
Okay, and then it's still in draft form, so there are different benefits that you get with each of those sponsorship levels, and then we have an a la carte purchasing option for sponsors as well. So,
okay, then what I would ask is, and I don't know, and I apologize because I don't see it, but give me just a ballpark. What does that $1,500 sponsorship level provide that we're looking at in the way of the?
I just want to say before they answer this is in draft form and it needs to be brought back to the finance committee for full review. So where they're saying it is now might be different than where it ends. I just want to be eyes wide open because we want the finance committee to review it in detail once it's done, and then obviously bring it back to the full board. So I just don't want to get. You can answer the question, but just know we haven't vetted it that full plan with the finance committee. So
yeah, and I understand that. I'm just I apologize. Let me clarify what I'm trying to look for. I just want to get an idea of what the rough idea is right now of that $1,500 level, so that I can compare it to what Kia's providing in this offer.
Right. So the $1,500 level on this draft includes a place on the stadium sign, one of the smaller locations on the front of the sign. It would include one announcement per game and 6 posts annually on social media. So this, the proposed Kia contract would be for this year. They pay for. There's also contingencies for the winter and spring, so it's not just a fall sponsorship. The way they have it broken, they would want a banner in the gym for the winter, and then they have the signs for the spring, and then the posts and things like that. So it would run through the end of the 21-22 school year.
So understanding the finance committee's reason why we don't support this, because I have both to compare, this 2,000 doesn't align with what we have here, for one. For what specifically their contract calls out for doesn't align with this. They're asking for more than what the $1,500 sponsorship we agree to, for one. Second, again, the whole aesthetic. We don't want banners all over the field. The other question the Finance Committee asks is, what are we looking at the sponsorship program to look like in the gym before we, again, agree to this? They're working on that. And then, again, in the Finance Committee doing their own vetting of what a sponsorship program, so we know that we're filling those holes, they're still working on it. They're not there yet. So again, to bring a contract and for us to approve it when we don't have a plan, I think wouldn't be wise. I wouldn't want to take action and us be committed to something and someone when we're not sure what that is.
Any additional questions?
Do you think that, I'm assuming you'd like to find a place where it fits for both. Is it still going, do you still have room to be able to go back and say, board said no, this is what we would like it to look like? Or is their program pretty much, this is our program?
Becky has worked more closely with the rep, but they've been willing to have conversation about having a sign on the scoreboard rather than on the field level. But in terms of like what the package is, the way they just come in and say like this is our deal. So when you start talking about some of the other details, I don't know that they would be flexible on those things.
Can you speak into the microphone just because it's being recorded? Sorry, Becky.
I was going to have Kurt do it. So they did in our initial conversation, I told them that we were working on our sponsorship plan and that I would have to see where that would align as we brought that forward to this group. And he said that if they needed to be flexible, that they certainly could. I mean, just to give you an example, we're all the way through the fall season and they're still willing to sponsor the single game for the fall. They have it kind of broken down by season in their package. So just, I don't know what that exactly would look like without having a full conversation, but I don't know that it was black and white, cut and dry.
Conceivably, I'm not looking for a commitment. I don't speak for Kia, but theoretically, the board votes no tonight. We could go back. We follow the process of building out our sponsorship plan in a way that the board's comfortable with. We may be able to go back. They may say yes for a partial season, and then in perpetuity going forward, assuming it aligns with what the board is comfortable with. I mean, is that kind of what you're getting at? Okay.
All right, hearing no other questions, so
I gotta read the motion, yeah. Need a motion to approve the administration's recommendation that the Board of Education approve the contract with District 1 for sponsorship money in the amount of $2,000 in return for advertising opportunities at athletic contest.
So we have to move on it in order to vote. So
Exactly.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Mr. DeVera, seconded by Mrs. Klingler. I think we've already had our questions, so roll call, please.
Miss Lee?
No.
Mr. DeBera?
No.
Mr. Francisco?
Yes, I can't walk away from money, sorry.
Mrs. McGinley?
No.
Mrs. Larson?
No.
Mr. Jewett?
No.
Mrs. Klingler?
No.
Motion does not pass.
Right, I need a motion for approval of the school improvement plan as submitted.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Francisco, seconded by Mr. Jewett. Any questions? Roll call, please.
Mrs. Larson?
Yes.
Mr. Jewett?
Yes.
Mrs. Klingler?
Yes.
Miss Lee?
Yes.
Mr. DeBera?
Yes.
Mr. Francisco?
Yep.
Mrs. McGinley?
Yes.
Motion carries.
All right, need a motion for the approval of the continued contractual services with R&G Consultants to manage Medicaid billing for the district.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Mr. DeVera, seconded by Mrs. Klingler. Any questions? Roll call, please.
Miss Lee?
Yes.
Mr. DeBera?
Yes.
Mr. Francisco?
Yes.
Mrs. McGinley?
Yes.
Mrs. Larson?
Yes.
Mr. Jewett?
Yes.
Mrs. Klingler?
Yes.
Motion carries.
I need a motion to approve. The administration recommends that the board, for the Huddle contract for $16,000 annually for a total cost of $50,700 for a 3-year contract.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Tavera, seconded by Mr. Jewett. Any questions?
Yeah, I'm sorry, I have questions. I don't know if it's because I'm not like super big into sports, so I apologize for this, but I need to know why this is as expensive as it is. Just for clarifications for me.
Partly because they are the exclusive video breakdown system that's out there, and they can charge what they want. I mean, to be realistic. But we did switch my first school year to a program-wide contract so that all of our programs could use it instead of just the team sports that were using it at the time. And we expanded their availability of those services with Huddle at that time.
Becky, could you give, assuming you know, I catch myself because I've used the term Reader's Digest, but I realize people in their like 30s don't know what that is. Can you just give just a brief description, Becky, to Ms. Klingler on functionality? It's not just watching, but the breakdown piece. I mean, I've seen that as a parent, but I think this will help.
Sure. So it's a video software system. We use any one of a number of devices to film game, and then we can upload it into the system. For our team sports, it does breakdown for us. So like our football coaches their film is in the system, and then they wake up Saturday morning after a game and it's broken down for them. Also offensive and defensive plays so that they can go right into practice with that information and provide that to students. It allows them to pull clips out of games and send it to students. It's a communication tool for students as well. And so they can also break down film. They can watch the game film, and it can pull out, this play, and this play, and they can just take that to a practice session to show the students, here's what you were doing, here's what you needed to do, or things like that. Students can also utilize this platform to get in and access that film themselves and watch it from home, so they don't necessarily have to do that on campus. And then they can also make their own highlight reels if they're looking to do college recruiting or anything like that with it. So it provides us a lot of opportunities for our students and growth in that area, but also the piece for having the video to watch to learn from as a learning tool is phenomenal. The other thing that I will mention, and it's an area where we're still expanding the use of, is in our individual sports, because it really was developed as a team sport tool. But the individual sport pieces, the one thing I really love about it is it has a slow motion. So you film in real time and you can break down individual skills in slow motion and share that with athletes. So just a lot of great opportunity for video use in terms of skill development.
Doesn't it also, just remind me, it has some integration with Max Preps as well for highlights and stuff, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, they can certainly share that on that platform as well. Again, it's a great tool for them. They can share those highlight films right out from Huddle as a tool. And it's really a platform that everybody's using for mostly team sports, but it's just growing in its reach in terms of a teaching tool.
Thank you for the clarification.
I think, because I'm sorry, when it was brought to finance, we asked for the data and analytics around it. So it wasn't part of the board agenda, but we did get the data at finance because we want to know why should we support this? How is this tool being utilized for our students? And I can't recall if you spoke about it in your presentation, but again, in that whole college recruiting, it is a good tool. And unfortunately, yes, it is, it is the only one out there. But we need to make sure that we're using it, because if we do want to support the contract, are we using it to its full advantage?
Sometimes I just need the human, tell me, break it down. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Did we have a motion on that one? Okay.
I think we had a.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay.
So then,
roll
call.
Mrs. McGinley?
Yes.
Mr. Francisco?
Yes.
Mr. DeVera?
Yes.
Miss Lee?
Yes.
Mrs. Larson?
Yes.
Mr. Jewett?
Yes.
Mrs. Klingler?
Yes.
Motion carries.
All right, last one. Whew. I need a motion to approve the selection of Guaranteed Energy Savings Company Allied as the vendor to identify the scope of work and begin negotiations. This is just a selection of the vendor, not the scope of the work.
So moved.
Yes.
Second.
Motion by Mrs. Lee. No, Klinger? Okay, thank you. The voice from down there. And seconded by Mr. De Vera. Any questions? Good. Roll call.
Mr. De Vera?
Yes.
Miss Lee?
Yes.
Mr. Francisco?
Yep.
Mrs. McGinley?
Yes.
Mrs. Larson?
Yes.
Mr. Jewett?
Yes.
Mrs. Klingler?
Yes.
Motion carries. All right, we are on to positive occurrences. The positive occurrence is that we're here, and it's before 10 o'clock, so there we go. We'll open up the floor. Who's got them?
I just wanted to reiterate, what even Dr. Mendoza and congratulating the board and their continuing education, with what we call TRI-I, the Illinois Association of School Boards. Again, I think it's important that the board attend these and continue that. Again, when I got on the board, we weren't doing those kinds of things, so I appreciate and just want to recognize the fellow board members in doing that work, because it is important.
And I'll piggyback on that. Just as a public body, the importance of continuing education and learning your craft is so huge. One of the reasons why I've stepped up to help out with IASB, but just in seeing other public bodies around, it's important to all of them. So thank you for that dedication as well.
I have two things. One, I wanted to thank you guys on the finance committee. I know there is a lot of time and effort that goes into that. And I always appreciate having like a second set of eyes on those things. I know they're very important and the administration does so good with that, but it's just really nice to, hear your guys' thoughts. I respect it and I wanted to thank you. The other thing was, I have to say it. So there was I have to. It's just there was a competition at Naperville for the marching band and the guard. I know you're gonna be shocked that I'm bringing that up, but I just wanted to point out that the percussion won like an honorary award for that, because that is something that has never happened that I can remember, and I was super excited about it. So I just wanted to let you guys know.
And then, of course, I mentioned last about soccer, and of course, they are co-champs, but they did win conference.
We were at the conference, the Lakes conference, and the guy that was speaking, I don't remember his name, but he's a superintendent, and he was talking, and I've been reflecting and really grateful for. He was really good. But I was really reflecting on, he said something that has this been the hardest 10 months? Is it 10 months or 10 weeks? Hardest 10 weeks of your career. And it's pretty much everyone's like, yes, to a person. And I was just reflecting and just grateful that you're all still here. So.
Any additional positive occurrences? Hearing none, I will ask for any discussion topics for future meetings, new agenda items.
I do have one. We haven't gotten a report lately in regards to the tech campus and how that's. I was reading. I do follow the tech campus, and they're bringing in some new programs with the addition of taking over the Lowe's facility. So I just would like to know, is that going to expand the offerings to our students? And, just where our numbers sit, especially, if COVID has affected that at all.
We will absolutely prepare something. I can tell you our numbers are in line with past years simply because I'm the tech campus executive board vice president, so basically I don't do anything there. If I fill in if the president doesn't run the meetings, but we continue to meet monthly. They have safety protocols in place, and we'll definitely bring an update back because we do have a lot of information we can share. So we're happy to do that.
And then just along those same lines, and I know they used to do this, again, this is all pre-COVID. You know, they used to do these open houses so that board members of the districts that they serve and offers to could come and attend. Now, again, I know that was pre-COVID, but you know, is there opportunity that they can share a video with school boards so they can see, especially as we have new board members come in to see the facilities and their offerings?
I actually believe I didn't hear about an open house this year, but I think if we wanted to schedule one unique to us, they would do it. So I'll get more information. I'll work with Dr. Rowley on that. We'll put something together. We'll try to get that to you before the holiday break.
Thank you.
Let's just see how everything else lines up. We'll get it to you like soon.
That's all I had.
Anybody else? All right. Next up is approval of closed session minutes. We reviewed these at our prior meeting.
Yes, I need a motion for the approval of the September 20th, 2021 regular board meeting closed session minutes.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Mrs. Klingler, seconded by Mr. Jewett. Any questions? Roll call, please.
Mrs. Klingler?
Yes.
Mr. Jewett?
Yes.
Mrs. Larson?
Yes.
Miss Lee?
Yes.
Mr. Rivera?
Yes.
Mr. Francisco?
Yes.
Mrs. McGinley?
Yes.
Motion carries. And that is it. We will adjourn at 9:54 p.m.
We have closed.